When we decide that we know what other people are thinking and feeling without asking them, we're doing a pretty significant amount of emotional bypassing. And we're also objectifying them. A lot of the work in being connected and caring for others is taking the time to remember and attempt to understand that they're living a different experience than us, that we don't actually know what they're thinking and feeling. As somebody that at times of my life identified as an empath in the toxic way, and as somebody that struggles to this day with people pleasing and feeling like I'm in trouble, a lot of the decoding I was doing was actually a trauma response, and very respectful to the people that I was in relationship with. When we decide we know what people are thinking, when we know what their feelings are, what their motivations are, we reduce them to essentially a character in our life, something that we can comment on, describe, and react to without actually doing the work to engage with them as a full, autonomous human being. And in this way, we deny them their humanity.
I love that video so much. It's linked in my caption, and I love her. So this has been something I have been working on for decades, and I'm so much better at it now. But I still have so much farther to go because I literally just caught myself in this yesterday. I'll give you an example in a minute. And if anybody who is, chronically codependent, or a people pleaser, always like she was saying, always assume that you're in trouble. Again, that's usually a trauma response, and it tends to happen with people who are raised in homes with a narcissist. Someone abusive, maybe an addict, alcoholic, or something where you are literally have to have the thermometer up the butt of a family member, usually a parent, and in order to feel safe. It's a very it's a great survival tactic, but it's maladaptive or whatever. I'm not a therapist, I don't know the right word, but all I know is that it keeps you alive as a kid, but it is the worst. It's the worst when you're an adult because you end up sabotaging so many relationships because, and that's why I don't call myself an empath. I respect when people call themselves that. And what I am is someone who is ridiculously aware of what everyone else is doing, but the stories I create are not always true. And this is any chronic codependent person will understand this. I don't even know how I feel about things. I don't know. I'm not in my body. I am somewhere else, disassociated most of the time. I literally have to pause and take a deep breath and be wait, how do I feel? What do I think? Because when you are working overtime at trying to assess the environment, assess the mood, the needs, of everyone around you. First of all, it's exhausting. Second of all, you don't even know yourself. That was one of the hardest things about codependency in my journey of healing, or whatever you want to call it, on not being so freaking codependent, is because it is really hard to know yourself when all of your time and energy is used assessing the environment, assessing all the people, and trying to figure out what they're all thinking and feeling and doing, and yet a lot of the time we're wrong. That was a huge awakening when I was oh my God, I'm so wrong about this. Now, before I go on, if you like this kind of content, especially ones like this where it's about me and my healing and stuff, these videos usually don't do that well. If you really like this, please comment, share, set notifications, all the things that really helps. It helps my work, but it also helps me know what y'all really like. It helps me grow my page. Anyway, I remember the first time, it usually started off small. I would get these realizations on a regular basis that everything that I was projecting onto someone else, that I just assumed that I know how they're feeling, because that's my full-time job, is to know how they're feeling, what they're doing, with what they're going to do all the time. And again, this is really useful in childhood so that, you make daddy happy, or, whatever, whoever it is that's could literally take your life or take all the resources you're depending on them for. But I just remember one time just assuming some woman was staring at me in a coffee shop, and I assumed because she's looking at me, she hates me, I'm in trouble, she thinks I'm stupid, she thinks I'm ugly, she thinks I'm blah, blah, blah. I had a whole, and this is the thing, people who follow me, one of the amazing things about healing from codependency is when you stop using all that energy to write fiction and create stories and narratives about people who, in your real life and that you interact with, when you stop using all of that time and energy on that, which is usually very self-destructive and destructive to relationships, then you actually can put that towards real creativity that's not sabotaging, right? Like, instead of writing stories about all these people in my life that usually they're not even true, I write stories, like that I do as a job. So I also, before anyone thinks that like, good, because I used to be so frustrated that I have this thing, that it's like I can't help it, that it's just my default is to be obsessed with what everyone else is thinking and doing. And yes, it's very hard to unlearn. And yes, this is how I ended up in bad relationships, is because, a narcissist or an addict or someone who is very abusive or whatever, like, they love people like us because we don't even know what we need, what we want, who we are, because we're obsessed with them and tiptoeing around them. Like, we are the enablers of those people. They need us, right? And so not only is it just better for my well-being, but I don't want to die. And I realize that is really what sets me up to be in abusive relationships, is being codependent, chronically codependent, obsessed with everyone else. So I don't even know myself, what I need, what I want, how I feel, right? And even though this is such a, like it seems like a curse, it's also a blessing, because I have yet to meet a person like this who isn't unbelievably creative. Unbelievably creative, right? We've been spinning stories. We've been weaving stories since we were children, right? That is an amazing gift, for lack of a skill. And if you, once, like, the more I started healing, the better my creativity got, right? Because not only did I put that towards an artistic outlet, but also, the more I healed, the more I understood myself. The more I understand myself and empathize with myself, instead of being really hard on myself and judging myself and hating myself and being in self-pity, right? I can hate myself and be in a lot of self-pity at the same time. Healing from that helped me, really learn how to like myself more, which then helped me be more empathetic, more loving, more understanding, more available to other people. And therefore, not only did my personal life benefit, but my creative life benefited. Right? Because if you want to write or make stories, you have to be able to understand other people, and not from your mindset of like, everyone hates me. Everyone's a monster. Because here's the thing. Let me know if you can relate to this. But one of the things that I realized, and the people that I have actually, mentored also, is that the thing that we all have in common is we always need a monster in our life. I'm always like, because was the norm for me as a child, having someone that I was scared of. It's like my default is that's what home feels like, is to look for someone I'm afraid of, right? That doesn't mean there aren't people that I should be afraid of or that I am afraid of. I mean, as a woman existing in the world, I have to be afraid all the time. But what I mean is that even if there's not anyone around who is like, seems dangerous to me, or, is like a little toxic or whatever, I will turn sometimes the most benevolent person, the nicest person, into my monster, into the bear. I have to have a bear. I have to have a bear, right? Because that is what feels comfortable to me, because that's what I know, is to always have someone in my life who is ready to punish me, who is ready to hurt me. And I thought it was just me, but the more I talk to other people who, are chronically codependent and survivors of DV and incest and childhood SA and whatever, one of the things I realize is that we tend to project that onto someone even when that person doesn't exist in the time. And that is dehumanizing. That doesn't mean that we can't trust our intuition, and that doesn't mean that we can't assess if someone is dangerous. But what I'm saying is that the biggest part of my journey is really going within and not making assumptions that I'm in trouble. I always think I'm in trouble. Like, it is literally my default, is that someone's mad at me or I'm in trouble. And that is a terrifying way to operate and walk through the world. But it also means not only do I feel scared, but I am projecting this monster onto other people unfairly, because I've been on the receiving end of that. Someone just like me. And I'm like, dude, I'm not saying that. It's very frustrating. So it's not just like maybe a boss that I would project this on, or, I mean, and this is the thing, like, part of my healing was really wanting to be eyeball to eyeball with everybody. Everybody. And when you are codependent, when you are also like a survivor of some sort of violence, especially from childhood, maybe I'm wrong, but in my experience, I was always looking at who am I looking up to? Like, who am I putting on a pedestal? Who am I looking up to because they're the boss? Who's the person who has power over me? And who am I looking down on? And sometimes that person is the same. I've said this before. Like, one of the things that I realized is that with like addicts in my life, or like narcissists or abusers, two things would happen. One, I default to them because they have power over me. They're the scary person, the la 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 la. But I also get to look down at them at the same time because I'm morally superior to them. And I'm better than them. In order to be victimized by this person, I have to have some sort of power. And so my power came from feeling like a victim, and at the same time because of that, feeling better than them. That doesn't mean I wasn't a victim. Maybe you misunderstand what I'm saying. I was somewhat trapped in that situation until I found a way out. I'm like, this is such a big conversation. Let me just try to not get off topic here. I would recreate this dynamic that I actually felt towards my dad, which is that I'm scared of you. Like, I'll kind of do whatever you say. You have all this power over me, but I also know that I'm actually smarter than you and better than you and more moral than you and all these things, right? And it's exactly the same thing I felt about my ex. I was just like, God, he's like, can't balance his, he doesn't have money, he doesn't have this. I was just like judging him all the time and being so frustrated and trying to save him. But then that makes me the parent of him, so I have power because I'm his mom. But because he's a man and he's terrifying, I'm also like looking up and down at the same time. Does that make sense? And so I'm usually in the position of like doing that. But it was really eye-opening when I kept finding myself in situations like what I was talking about before, in the coffee shop where someone was like, a woman was looking at me. And then I immediately I'm like, are you like above me or below me? And this is also, you take this interpersonal work and you put it into the context of like deconstructing patriarchy and white supremacy culture and capitalism, and you start to see like this hierarchical way of thinking is literally like this, the personal is political. The more I heal this, the more I'm going to look for this kind of eyeball to eyeball with everyone, right? I don't want to be better than anyone. I don't want to be worse than anyone either. So whether it's in my personal life, in my relationships, or in terms of like, all of these intersections, right? As a woman, I'm like, oh, but as a white person, I'm like, oh, like, I don't want that. I don't want this. I don't want this. I just want eyeball to eyeball. And so just to throw that in there, that my inner healing of myself is actually happening at the same time of me understanding all of these hierarchical systems and abusive systems of oppression, and how they really are very similar to our personal relationships. And so the more I heal my personal relationships, the more I'm also going to carry that out into my communities. But that girl at the coffee shop, I know I'm so all over the place. Please bear with me because I'm literally just, this is not scripted, I'm just talking. One time, this woman came up to me, because this happened several times. And every time I was like, oh, they hate me, or he hates me, or they're all judging me, right? Which is just me projecting my own self-hatred onto them. And one woman, she came up and she was like, I love your shoes. And I was like, so shocked. I was like, oh, that's so weird. This whole time she thought I was stupid, ugly, must be talking too loud, must be this, must be that. Like all the things that I'd ever heard, all the things that I believed a lot or a little bit, I projected on her as this monster. And she's just like this woman at a coffee shop drinking her coffee, minding her business, but just, looking at me a few times. And then I'm like, you know what I mean? And that was like, this dumb example was so eye-opening, because I was like, wow, I wonder how many people who might be looking at me that I'm assuming they hate me. And it really changed my world, because from then on, I was like, every time I'd be like, oh my God, they're blah, blah, blah. Maybe not every time, but I'd be like, wait, maybe they think this is a cute jacket. By the way, got this online, $4 used. The old me, if someone was looking at me, might be like, oh my God, they see this. They probably think that I'm so cheap. And the new me is like, maybe they like this jacket, or maybe they're literally not thinking about me at all. One of the most liberating things about dealing with my codependency is realizing that most people are not even thinking about me at all. Much less, they're not only not thinking bad things about me, they're just not thinking about me at all. That was one of the most liberating things, is to realize people are not thinking about me. I'm not that important. You know, I've never thought that I was like the best person in the world that everyone revolves around, right? Like men are taught that they are like the king of the castle, and then the family and everyone revolves around them. Like, I have never thought that way. But you know what the opposite side of that coin is that I'm the piece of crap that the world revolves around. That is an unbelievably self-absorbed way of thinking. And it's so painful to think that way. It is so exhausting to think that way. It's such a tragedy to feel that way. And when you feel that way, not only are you harming yourself by assuming that everyone hates you, you're also harming everyone else. Because maybe some of those people are thinking that, but most of them aren't thinking about it at all. They're not thinking about us. They don't care. They've got their own little, they're thinking about their job. They're thinking about their family. They're thinking about how everyone hates them. Like, they're thinking, but they're probably not thinking about you. That was so liberating, y'all. So one of my biggest works on myself is to constantly have to bring it back to me and be like, how do I feel? What's going on with me? What do I think about this? Because when you're so codependent, and then what's worse is when you're this codependent and you end up in a relationship with an abuser, you absolutely lose yourself. You go bye-bye. You're gone. And that's why a lot of women, when they get out of these relationships with very self-absorbed, selfish men, they get out of it and they're divorced. And at the age of 50, they're like, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know where I would go. And I find that so sad, but also so liberating, because some women, like our grandmas, never got that moment where they even got to figure out who they were, because they were trapped in a house, held hostage by their husbands, serving the husband, the kids, his parents, everybody, right? So I love that and it's never too late, you know? Frees up so much time to not be obsessed with what everyone else is thinking and just keep bringing it back to center. And how you do that, there's a lot of things. This is a long journey. But one of the first things that really helps when I'm running around in my head or running around in everyone else's head, you know? I mean, one of my old mentors was like, get out of their head. Stop running around their head. You don't even know. You are not invited into their head, you know? But not only does it free up a lot of time and energy for me to actually pour that into things that matter, right? That aren't just complete fabrication. It also makes the world so much less scary. And believe me, this still happens. Some days when I'm feeling very sensitive, all it takes is one comment on, YouTube or TikTok, and it doesn't even have to be mean. It could just be like yesterday, someone was like, you're really long-winded. I literally just didn't want to make any more content the other day. I was like, yeah, I know. But that's why some people like me. Like, part of me want to be like, well, yeah, but if you don't like that, you don't have to follow me. But literally, I was like, oh my God. I started questioning everything, right? And it completely derailed me. So no matter what, sometimes I'm just more sensitive than others. And back to the example I wanted to give you. Yesterday, I was just very sensitive yesterday. Apparently, I'm in perimenopause. Didn't even realize that. That's a whole nother video. Wow, I just cry all the time for no reason. But yesterday, I was very sensitive. And Anthony and I got in a little disagreement about the kitchen because I just left a mess, and then I cleaned it up, but I didn't. So he was like, babe, and then it started this dumb thing. You know how sometimes you just have the same little fight again and again because I'm this way and he's this way, and we try to figure out how these completely different personalities accept each other, but also hold ourselves to a high standard, and it just threw me off. I was like, oh my God, we're not okay. And I was just I get in defensive mode. Well, and then I'm just really dysregulated. So we talked about it. And then finally at the end, he was he could tell that I still was really in my head. And he goes, babe, we're okay. Okay? And I just started crying because I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that sometimes just that one line helps me so much, because I go to in a place of oh my God, blah, 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 and he's fine. He doesn't have all these trauma responses. So him is just, we have a little disagreement. We talk about it. It's over. We move on. But I'm still ah! In this conversation yesterday, it reminded me, I was like, oh, right. You know, when you're raised in a very stable home with two loving parents, I'm not saying that he does not ever experience any of the stuff I'm talking about, but I am saying that he doesn't jump from 1 to 3,762 in a split second, because that's not his default. He didn't need to have that to protect himself growing up, right? And so when there's conflict, especially a small conflict, he's still very secure in our relationship. But he knows me well enough, and he knows my story obviously well enough, where he can sense that even though we've just like talked about it, he can sense she's still off, and he just intuitively knew to say yesterday, babe, we're okay. And I was just like, oh my God, because I immediately spiral into either like, usually it's defensive mode, usually it's like ah, right, but then other times it's like abandonment stuff, but usually it's like I don't, like, okay, that's a whole nother video. The reason why I'm saying all this is that thank God I've done enough work on myself at this point, and before I even met him, that I wasn't just like assuming, if anyone texts me, because I still, if someone texts me and they don't like, and if anything is in caps, I mean, the way I will read a text, it's like terrifying. I just assume any text is someone screaming at me, like, unless it's abundantly clear they're not. Not always, but especially if I'm feeling insecure that day, I'm like, any email I get, anything, if someone doesn't text me back right away, I'm like, they hate me. They're mad at me, And I have learned to not react or respond from that place, but just to go in and sit with it. And then usually they text back when, and I don't text people back all the time. That's what's so funny is with ADHD, I'll sometimes accidentally ghost someone for weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, I really hope that they're not as sensitive as I am and they don't think I hate them. So it's just so funny because like now that I'm like, oh right, like maybe they have ADHD. Maybe they're at work. Maybe, I'm like, I just try to remember, I do not know the context. I do not know what's going on in their lives. I don't know why they're doing this. For me to project a story onto them is so unfair, right? And like she was saying, there's so much nuance to this because I know people, I'm not talking about abusers right now. I'm talking about just like normal people, right? Who don't use tactics like the silent treatment and, like Darvo and all that stuff. I'm just talking about normal people like the healthy people in my life. They get it the worst. They get it the worst. And especially if you live with someone, right? I am so, like I said, I'm so glad I've done this work, because if I was not at least in the habit of taking a beat, taking a deep breath, if I was not in that habit, I would have burned this marriage down a long time ago. Because when I'm in my trauma response, I assume the worst about him, or the worst about myself, or just the worst. And usually I'm like, got my swords and I'm ready to go, right? I don't need a man. All right, I go into that really quickly. Or sometimes I'll go into like, he's gonna leave me, but usually it's like, I'm gonna leave him, Anyway, this is literally one of the most important parts of my healing. It's learning how to take a beat and pause and take a breath and not be so reactive. And the whole point, she was responding to a video of someone saying like, I'm not doing all the emotional work of like, if someone can't tell me how they're feeling, I'm not going to read into it and try to do all this work. And I agree with that, because at the same time, what I don't need, for instance, is it's a lot of work to ask Anthony or Liz or any of my friends to just do all this work and have to read my mind and have to, no, I need to like learn how to speak. I need to be less like face my fear of confrontation and ask. Every once in a while, like I usually don't have to, but every once in a while I still have to be like, are you mad at me? And he's like, no, I would tell you. Remember, I tell you when I'm mad at you. I'm like, okay. But it just practicing, like practicing just having hard conversations, or it's not even hard. It's for the normal person, it's not hard. But for me to being like, excuse me, you kind of hurt my feelings. Like that is so hard. It's not now. I'm really good at it now. On some days it is hard still. But literally, y'all don't know old Melanie. Old Melanie, you would be shocked. Shy. I was so shy. Oh, God, I'm like, I really should talk more about young Melanie, because this is not who I'm such a different person now in terms of like, I'm not the person. My sister used to have to be like, what's wrong? And I'm like, what? She's like, clearly something's wrong and you're not saying it. Just say it. And I was so scared I couldn't say it. She literally just pulled it over me. So I'm so grateful for the people in my life who knew that I was starting from a lower place of being able to communicate, lower, or just, it was harder for me. So I was kind of like not where they were yet, and they gave me so much grace, and they showed me through role modeling how to have healthy conversations, how to have healthy conflict, how to say what you need, how to say no, how to, all this stuff. God, this stuff was like, what? I didn't even know that you could say, let me think about it. I've told y'all that before. Like, it's changed my life when I just stopped saying yes, 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 or no, 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 but usually it's yes. Usually I'm agreeing to stuff I really can't do or shouldn't do. I don't have the bandwidth to do, but I don't want people to hate me or be mad at me. And when I finally learned, like, oh, I can just say, let me think about it. Let me get it back to you. Life changer, y'all. And that was like 20 years ago I learned that. And, but up until then I was like, why does everybody ask so much of me? Because I didn't realize I could say no. I was like, oh, I can just say no. So it is not my job. And it actually enables someone if I do all of that work for them, right? So the opposite extreme is like someone having to just hold my hand and do all this work for me and be like, you know what I mean? It is not my job to make someone speak, to, all that stuff. At the same time, having come so far in my own life, I really try to understand that some people just don't know how to put words to things. They don't know how to have conflict. They don't know, or that I may be assuming a lot of things and that I'm still uncomfortable with conflict, and that, you know what? Facing my fear of confrontation, facing my fear of just honest, genuine conversations, even though it's scary, it's so liberating. It's so liberating, y'all. And it is so empowering because I don't feel like this victim who has to, be like this all the time. And I don't feel morally superior to everyone as a result of feeling victimized by everybody. I really start more or less try to see people as human beings, no better, no worse than me. It's hard to not think it's hard to not see, like, I still judge. I still judge, like, rapists and murderers and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I'm just like, oh, everybody's a happy, equal, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Please don't take this too far. But I am saying all that energy of running around in people's heads, making up stories, all because that's what you're so used to doing from when you're a child through whenever. Just because that's normal and the default doesn't mean it's healthy. And it literally, it stands in the way of having honest, genuine, loving relationships with people. So for me, the very first thing was to take a beat, go inside and be like, how do I feel? What am I thinking? What do I want? And also, maybe I don't know what they're thinking. Like maybe they're not thinking about me at all. From that foundation is where most of my healing happened. And again, I'm still like, y'all, I'm a mess sometimes still. Like, trauma response, right? But I've seen so much growth from who I used to be. I can't wait to see who I am 10 years from now. I love this. I love this journey. It's exciting and it's adventure. It's painful, but it's so rewarding too. So rewarding. Never a dull moment, eh? If you like this kind of stuff, again, please comment, share resources, share it with your friends, set notifications, do all the things that really help me, and also help me know if you want more stuff like this. Thanks for being here.